Your Bibles will open again to Ecclesiastes 4. On yesterday, I was working in verse number 4. Again, I considered all travail and every right work, that for this a man is envied of his neighbor. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. In that matter, travail, the word travail carries with it the idea of work and labor, the long-standing, consistent labor. After the new wears off of it and the shine has dulled, and this thing is no longer new, but it has become truly a work. I've been laboring with the Bright Spot Hour, as I mentioned a little bit ago, for 40 years, and the newness has worn off of this ministry. And it has become a real labor of love. It is the greatest door God has ever opened for me, and it truly is a part of my life. I mean, my whole life, 40 years of the 57 years that I've been alive, have been occupied with working with the Bright Spot Hour. I know nothing else. But the shine has worn off of it, and it has become a matter of travail. I say that in the kindest and in the greatest sense of the term. The Bright Spot Hour is not a burden to me, it's a joy. And it is the greatest thing God has ever done for me so far as the ministry is concerned. But the newness and the giddiness is all gone. And it has become what it is, truly a labor of love. Again, I considered all travail in every right work, a man that would stay in the right path and would be occupied with the right work, decade after decade. For this a man is envied of his neighbor. And I mentioned on yesterday when we had to leave the radio, I think about pastors, and so many pastors don't stay in their pulpit a long time. There are some pastors that have pastored 10 churches. And my pastor at Rock Springs is about to begin his 40th anniversary, his 40th year pastoring at Rock Springs Baptist Church. He went to Rock Springs and began pastoring there about the time my grandfather brought me on board with the Bright Spot Hour. And he has labored there for 40 years. I hope the Lord will give him 50. I hope the Lord will give him another 10 years to pastor and to labor there in the pulpit and in the work at the Rock Springs Baptist Church. Be that as it may, there are other pastors that will look at the longevity of my pastor at Rock Springs, Brother Gallimore, the longevity of my grandfather for 43 years at the Tabernacle, or look at the longevity of other men that labored 35, 45, 50 years in the same pulpit, and they will look at that with an area of envy. There are businessmen that will look at other businessmen. I know businessmen personally here in Greenville, South Carolina, that are beyond 80 years of age, that get up and go to the office every day. They get up, get dressed, and they go to the office. And if you call their office, they'll be in their office. The secretary will transfer your call, and you can talk to them, and they're keeping office hours. And they're 80 and beyond, and they still get up every day and go to work. I have many business friends of mine that are beyond 70 years old that get up and go to work every day. And many of these men have told me, I have no plans to retire. I am not going to retire. I have no intentions of retiring. I'm better off doing what I'm doing. I had a businesswoman that is closer to 80 than she is 70 told me, and she said, the best thing I can do for my mind, I don't want to get Alzheimer's, and the best thing I can do for my mind is get up and go to work. Get up, get dressed, go to work. And she works with a lot of numbers and facts and figures and ledgers and charts, and that takes a great amount of discipline to keep all of that organized in your mind. But she's correct, that is the best thing she could do to ward off Alzheimer's or the onset of dementia. I have no plans of retiring. I don't plan 25 years from now to do anything different than I'm doing right now, as long as my health will hold up and my mind will stay clear, and I can continue laboring and working, I have no plans of retirement or changing what I'm doing right now. Now, whenever you have a businessman that is still going to the office at 80, you have a pastor that's still pastoring in the same pulpit after 40 or 45 years, you have a missionary that has given 40 years on the foreign field, these men become envied by other people in society for their good work. They carry with them a level of gravitas. They carry with them an area of respect. They are to be respected, if for no other reason, for the fact of their longevity, and that they were never forced out of business because of a scandal, or they were never forced to close up their business or defend themselves in a court of law because of some scandal that had been trumped up, dreamed up. But having said that, Solomon says this is also vanity and vexation of spirit. Now, why would Solomon say that after something as noble and honorable as a man that has labored in travail, the newness has worn off of the item. It's not a giddy thing anymore. It has become labor, and he stayed with it and labored with it in the matter of his travail, and he has worked diligently, and yet Solomon says this is also vanity and vexation of spirit. Now, how am I to understand that? Well, I think that is explained like this. After a man has given himself so faithfully and fervently to the ministry or to the mission field or to his business, or maybe a statesman. Our problem today is we have so many politicians. God deliver us from politicians. And Lord, give us some statesmen. Give us some honorable, true, and upright men. Give us some statesmen. And yet, after all of the decades of maintaining one's integrity, like Joseph tried to do down in Egypt, when his boss man's wife approached him, and he retained his integrity, and he said, the master wotteth not what is in the house. He's committed everything to me, and he's given me free run of everything except you, and I will not sin against my master, and I'm not going to sin against God. And he retained his integrity. He saved Egypt by the interpretation of the dreams, and spared the life not only of the Egyptians, but spared the life of his family. And yet, the book of Exodus, before we leave the Pentateuch, we discover very early in the book of Exodus that there arose a king who knew not Joseph. There arose a king who knew not Joseph. If Joseph had not been there, there would not have been an Egypt, because they would have all starved. If there had not been a Joseph, Jacob and his offspring, the brothers of Joseph and their families, would have died. They would have starved to death. If Joseph had not been there, the ancient world would have been vastly different than it is and than it was, because they would have all died. It was the man Joseph that spared the lives of those people in the patriarchal time. And yet within just a very short number of years, there arose a king who knew not Joseph. Joseph was a household name. He was a well-known personality. He was a leading personality of that day. But now, how different is that than our society today? You ask the average young person, who is George Washington, who is Thomas Jefferson, who is James Madison, who is Benjamin Franklin, who is Patrick Henry. You begin to ask the average young person, who are these founders of our country and framers, and scarcely there'll be few of them that can explain to you who these individuals are. And if they know anything about them, they've been so indoctrinated in the public school system, that they would say, well, they were white racist landowners that oppressed indigenous people in the New World. And yet, if it had not been for these men, there would have been no United States. The country would not be framed and founded as it is. I think about the men here in Greenville, South Carolina. You drive up and down the highway, and you'll see a man's name on a highway. Right here near my office is the Harold B. Seitler Interchange. And there's a monument on the side of US 25 with the bust of my grandfather and a statement concerning his work at Tabernacle. And I guarantee you there's not 300 people in Greenville County that know that monument is there. How quickly people forget, how quickly things change, how quickly individuals fade from view. So a man gives himself to every right work. A man labors in travail all of his life. A man diligently puts forth every effort to do that which is honorable and upright and right. And then he runs his race and dies, and how quickly people forget that he ever lived. Solomon said, this is also vanity and vexation of spirit.
Write the Bright Spot Hour at Post Office Box 4, Greenville, South Carolina 29602. Visit the website at